Hello, my name is Janelle Martin, and I am a graduate student at the University of Texas at Arlington. I am currently studying nursing leadership in complex health systems. I was assigned the book, The Elements of Style by William Strunk Jr. And a little bit about this author. William Strunk Jr. was born in 1869 in Cincinnati, Ohio, and obtained a bachelor's degree in 1890 from the University of Ohio. He has a PhD from Cornell University in 1896 and was deemed as the professor. He also went to Sorbonne College de France in 1898 and 1899, studying the morphology and philology. He is a professor of mathematics first at Rose Polytechnical Institute, and then became a professor of English at Cornell for over 46 years. In 1918 is when he first wrote The Elements of Style. In 1922, he also published another English metrics book. He also reviewed many additions to Cinewolf's Juliana, multiple works of Dryden, James Fenimore's Cooper's Last of the Mohicans, and he also edited multiple Shakespearean plays. One quote that I found from William Strunk Jr. was about his Elements of Style book, and he stated, "Vigorous writing is concise. A sentence should contain no unnecessary words, a paragraph no unnecessary sentences, for the same reason that a drawing should have no unnecessary lines and a machine no unnecessary parts." A little more about this author. He was well known by the students at Cornell and also very well liked. He had a group called the Manuscript Club, which is where he socially became known by the student E.B. White. He hosted this manuscript club that was also known as an informal Saturday night gathering of students and professors interested in writing. When he met E.B. White, he became one of his, not only his students, but also one of his friends. He studied alongside of this professor for quite a long time, and later on, E.B. White was asked to do the enlargement and the revision of the Elements of Style. The Element of Style book, written originally by William Strunk Jr. and later edited and revised by E.B. White, is a principle of writing style. It goes into the customary rules that are commonly violated by most writers. It gives tips and tricks for the reader of how to write a professional paper without becoming too into detail and also being very precise. This book was known by many as the Writer's Bible. The target audience for this book is students of all ages. It also is a book that many faculty use, and it can be used as a transition or a help for those learning English as a second language. Another quote that I found from William Strunk Jr. was, "If you don't know how to pronounce a word, say it out loud." I found this very interesting because this is something that I do regularly, not only in my own personal studies, but also with my children as we learn to read and learn to do things in school. Once we say it out loud, it helps us to understand how to pronounce it. Some of the strengths and shortcomings of the book, I found that there was many pros. The rules were fantastic. Many rules in the book really helped me to understand, writing style and the do's and don'ts of writing. It also talks about, the composition of putting a paper together, the paragraph style, starting with an introduction, your body of the paper, and then concluding and how to summarize your purpose of the paper. There's a lot about simplification and not over detailing a paper, and then being very clear and not being too wordy. One of the cons that I found with this book, I believe that this was originally written to enhance the writer at the college level. And I found that this book could easily be used in middle school or high school to prepare students much earlier on for writing a valid and accurate paper. I really felt like this book could have been used for me personally much earlier in my life and in my studies. I feel like I would have done much better in English as an English 101 student when I originally went to the University of Nevada, Reno in 1996, had I read something like this book. Some of the rules of writing that I found that were really interesting and will be able to take away for my future papers was to not break sentences in two. One thing that I find myself doing is breaking a sentence into more than one when I feel like I need to expand, where, William Strunk Jr. states that it's more important to leave the sentence together and just use a comma in between. I found that to be very interesting because I find myself, and I've read many other papers where we tend to put more sentences together instead of just, expanding on our original sentence. The second thing that I found was really interesting to me was the thought of using an active voice. And it's described as using a voice that's in the real person. And the negative was, don't use a sentence that sounds something like, my first visit to Boston will always be remembered by me. But instead, it should sound something like, I shall always remember my first visit to Boston. And it's just turning it into that active voice instead of speaking about yourself in the third person. Last, one of the other things that I found really interesting was to omit needless words. I find myself very guilty of this regularly when I'm trying to write a paper. Needless words being things like, instead of saying the question as to whether, just say whether instead of, adding things to make it, expand on that sentence. Another example was, instead of saying the reason why that is, instead of just saying because, make it simple, be generic a little bit and be just to the point. Instead of saying the fact that he had not succeeded when you could just say his failures, another way to just simplify and be more concise. Again, I found the objectives of the book to be more of a standardization of writing and how we can write and, put our words together to, sound more to the point. Many uses of grammar and rules of grammar that I found to be really interesting. And again, I wish I had used them much earlier in my studies. This book was called The Little Book, and it was meant as an objective to be carried around in your pocket. The original size of the book was pocket size, and it could be carried around as, like I said before, the writer's Bible. And later, when E.B. White revised the book, he made it more of a, handheld book size, still to be carried around as a guide for college-age students. Some of the reviews that I found after it was rewritten by E.B. White, one of the reviews was that it's still a little book, small enough and important enough to carry in your pocket as I carried in mine, by Charles Osgood. Another was, this is an incredible book. I wish I read it at the start of my studies. All other grammar books, essay writing tools, and how-to books are incomparable to the swiftness and conciseness, by Oliver Brzezinski. In my opinion, this is a must-read recommend for anyone that is writing papers or studying in school. I found it to be very interesting. Like I said, I really wish that I had read it sooner. I wish that I had some of these tips in earlier papers, which I'm sure some of my professors do as well. And I plan to use this, as I have highlighted and sticky noted the entire book with things that I find myself doing regularly. So I plan to use this quite a bit in my future studies. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to any questions later. Bye-bye.